Ladies and gentlemen, today I want to share something that has changed the lives of countless people. And if you embrace it, it can change yours too. We all dream big, we all start with excitement, we all want progress, but only a few continue when the excitement fades. Anyone can start, but only the committed finish. And commitment doesn't come from feelings, it comes from discipline. So today, let us explore the truth behind consistency, how to build it, how to protect it, and how forcing yourself, yes, forcing yourself, becomes the first step to creating a life you are proud of. Motivation is beautiful, but it is also temporary. It comes like a breeze, refreshing, exciting, full of energy. But just like a breeze, it passes. The mistake most people make is believing that success depends on staying motivated every single day. But no one on this earth wakes up motivated every morning. Not monks, not athletes, not entrepreneurs, not spiritual teachers. What truly separates those who rise from those who remain stuck is not the intensity of their motivation. It is the reliability of their consistency. Motivation is a visitor. It comes when it wants, it leaves when it wants, and it never promises to stay. But consistency is a resident. It lives with you. It stays even when you are tired. It stays even when you are uninspired. It stays even when life feels heavy. That is why the people who achieve greatness are not the ones who depend on inspiration. They are the ones who build discipline. Imagine someone watering a plant only on the days they feel excited about gardening. That plant will never grow, but when someone waters it every day, whether they feel like it or not, slowly, quietly, consistently, it becomes strong. Your habits, your goals, your dreams, they are the same. They grow when you show up, not when you feel like showing up. Some days you will wake up full of energy. Other days you will drag your feet through the morning. On some days you will feel proud of your progress. On others you will question your efforts. But consistency teaches you one powerful lesson. Or you don't have to feel good to do good. You simply have to show up. And when you show up enough times, something magical happens. Your mind stops fighting you. What once felt difficult becomes natural. What once felt exhausting becomes automatic. That is the power of choosing consistency over motivation. You are no longer controlled by your emotions. You are guided by your commitment. So don't wait for motivation to come and save you. Don't wait for the perfect mood or the perfect morning. Let your actions lead. Let your feelings follow. Because motivation may start the journey, but consistency will finish it. Your mind is designed for survival, not success, and survival always chooses comfort over growth. That is why the moment you try to do something new, something challenging, something that demands effort, your mind immediately starts resisting. It whispers excuses, it creates doubts, it magnifies fears. Not because you are weak, but because your mind is unfamiliar with this new path. Anything unfamiliar feels unsafe to the brain, even if it is good for your future. Think about the first time you tried waking up early, or exercising, or studying with focus, or changing your routine. The task itself wasn't impossible, but the resistance inside your mind felt heavier than the activity. You felt tired, uninterested, distracted, irritated. And most people mistake that resistance for a sign that they should stop. But the truth is the opposite. Resistance is the clearest sign that you are entering a space where growth truly happens. When the mind faces something new, it activates old patterns of comfort. It tries to pull you back into routines where nothing changes. It will tell you, do it tomorrow. You're too tired. Why bother? These voices are not the voice of your potential, they are the voice of your old habits trying to protect themselves. Every meaningful change you attempt will feel uncomfortable at first. Not because the change is wrong, but because your mind has not yet built a pathway for it. Just like a path in a forest becomes clear only after walking on it repeatedly, your brain builds new neural connections only when you push through the discomfort again and again. When you force yourself to do something repeatedly, even when it feels hard, you are training your mind to accept a new version of you. The resistance reduces with every repetition. What was once uncomfortable becomes tolerable, and what was tolerable becomes easy. This is how champions are made, not by avoiding resistance, but by walking through it until it loses its power. Remember, the first step is always the hardest, not because the action is difficult, but because the mind is trying to protect you from the unknown. But nothing great has ever been achieved by staying inside the boundaries of comfort. Growth begins the moment you tell your mind, I understand you're uncomfortable, but we're doing this anyway. Your mind's resistance is not a wall blocking your path. It is a sign that the path you are taking is transforming you. Every time you push through, even a little, you are proving to your mind that you are capable of more than your comfort zone allows, and slowly the unfamiliar becomes familiar, the hard becomes normal. The once impossible becomes your new routine. Starting small is not a sign of weakness. It is the strongest foundation you can build. Most people wait for a perfect moment to make a big move, a massive leap, a dramatic change, and because those perfect moments rarely come, their dreams remain untouched. They imagine that transformation requires huge actions, extreme motivation, or sudden breakthroughs. But real change, lasting change, meaningful change always begins with small, simple, repeatable steps. Think about how a child learns to walk. They don't take big confident steps on the first day. They wobble, they fall, they take one tiny step, and that tiny step is celebrated. It is repeated, it becomes 2 steps, then 3, and eventually that small beginning turns into the ability to run. Nobody expects the child to sprint on the first attempt. But as adults, we expect ourselves to start big every time, and when we can't, we stop. Small steps protect you from overwhelm. When you tell yourself, I will study for 5 hours every day, I will exercise for an hour daily, I will change everything starting tomorrow, your mind immediately feels threatened. It sees a mountain and becomes afraid. But when you say, I will study for 10 minutes, I will walk for 5 minutes, I will do one small task, the mind relaxes. It cooperates. It lets you begin. And beginning is the most important part. Every great success story has a humble starting point. The biggest companies began from a small room. The strongest bodies began with a small workout. The deepest wisdom began with a small moment of realization. Even spiritual journeys begin with small steps. A few minutes of reflection, a simple breath of awareness, a tiny act of kindness. Small does not mean insignificant. Small means doable, repeatable, sustainable. When you show up daily with a small effort, something extraordinary happens. You build momentum. What feels hard today becomes normal tomorrow. What feels normal becomes easy. And what becomes easy grows naturally into something bigger. This is the quiet power of consistency. Small daily actions multiply, compound, and turn into massive results. A person who reads 2 pages a day will finish books that someone else never even starts. A person who exercises for 5 minutes will eventually build a routine that lasts a lifetime. A person who works on their goal for even 10 focused minutes every day will make more progress than someone who works intensely once in a while. Small steps cut through excuses. They remove procrastination. They silence perfectionism. And most importantly, they create identity. When you do something small every day, you begin to see yourself as a person who shows up, even if the action is tiny. And once that identity forms, the size of your actions naturally expands. So don't underestimate the power of starting small. A small step taken today is infinitely more valuable than a giant step you keep postponing. Every great journey is built on small daily movement. Every breakthrough begins with a small beginning. Start small, but start every day. When you look at a goal as one big, overwhelming challenge, your mind immediately feels threatened. It begins to think of everything that could go wrong, every difficulty, every step, every bit of effort required, and suddenly the goal feels impossible. That feeling of being overwhelmed is one of the biggest reasons people give up before they even begin. The truth is, the human mind is not built to handle huge tasks all at once, but it is incredibly capable when the task is broken into tiny, manageable pieces. Imagine standing at the bottom of a massive staircase. If you stare at the top, your legs feel heavy, your motivation drops, and you begin to doubt yourself. But if you focus only on the next step, just one, suddenly it becomes easy. One step leads to another, and without even realizing it, you eventually reach the top. Your goals work exactly the same way. Looking at them as a giant climb will exhaust you mentally, but breaking them into micro steps makes them achievable. When you divide your big goals into the smallest possible actions, something magical happens. Your mind stops resisting. It no longer feels like you are attempting something impossible. It sees a task so small, so simple, so easy that saying no to it becomes harder than saying yes. That tiny win gives you a sense of progress, a burst of confidence, and a feeling of achievement, all of which motivate you to take the next step. Micro steps reduce the weight of the journey. Instead of saying, I have to finish a whole chapter, you say, I will read for 5 minutes. Instead of saying, I have to get fit, you say, I will stretch for 2 minutes. Instead of saying, I have to become disciplined, you say, I will follow one small habit today. These mini tasks feel so effortless that your brain doesn't trigger the usual excuses. You bypass procrastination entirely. Another powerful benefit of micro steps is that they create consistency without force. When the steps are small, you are able to repeat them every day. And repetition builds rhythm. Rhythm builds routine. Routine builds discipline. Slowly, without pressure, without stress, your lifestyle begins to change. You become the kind of person who shows up not because the task is easy, but because you have trained your mind to move in tiny, doable steps. Breaking down goals also gives you clarity. A large goal feels foggy, unclear, and complicated. But when you break it into micro steps, every part becomes defined. You know exactly what to do today, this hour, this minute. Clarity reduces confusion, and reduced confusion leads to higher action. And here's the beautiful thing, micro steps compound. 5 minutes a day becomes 50 minutes over time. A tiny workout becomes a strong routine. A short study habit turns into mastered concepts. What once felt like a mountain becomes a series of small hills you cross one by one. Progress doesn't happen when you take one big leap. Progress happens when you take countless small steps, consistently, patiently, and intentionally. The greatest transformations you will ever create will come from small actions repeated daily, not giant actions done occasionally. Break your goals down so small that success becomes inevitable. And once you begin taking those small actions, you will realize that the journey wasn't as heavy as your mind made it seem. It was simply waiting for you to take the first tiny step. One of the biggest reasons people fail to stay consistent is not because they lack discipline, but because they are surrounded by distractions that quietly drain their focus, energy, and willpower. These distractions don't shout, they whisper. They don't stop you instantly, they steal you slowly. They don't pull you backward in one big move. They take tiny bites out of your time until nothing meaningful is left. And the painful truth is that most people try to build discipline as us without first removing the things that constantly break it. Imagine trying to fill a bucket with water when there's a small hole at the bottom. No matter how fast or how consistently you pour, the bucket will never fill. The problem isn't your effort. The problem is the hole. In the same way, your distractions are the holes in your life. You can be sincere, motivated, hardworking, and determined. But if distractions remain unaddressed, your progress will always leak out. Distractions come in many forms. Some are loud and obvious, like endless notifications, social media scrolling, or binge watching. Others are silent, like keeping your phone near you, surrounding yourself with people who constantly pull you into unnecessary conversations, or working in an environment filled with temptations. And then there are internal distractions, old habits, emotional triggers, thoughts that wander, and the mind's natural tendency to seek comfort instead of effort. Most people try to control distractions through willpower. But willpower is like a battery. It drains throughout the day. The more decisions you force yourself to make, the weaker your self-control becomes. Instead of fighting distractions repeatedly, the wiser approach is to remove them from the root. Think about how a gardener removes weeds. If you cut the top and leave the roots, the weeds will grow back, often stronger than before. But when the roots are removed, the garden is clear, spacious, and ready to grow. In the same way, you must find the root of your distractions. If social media wastes your time, don't just avoid it. Remove the shortcut from your home screen. Turn off notifications entirely. Keep your phone in another room when you work. If people constantly interrupt you, communicate boundaries, or change your workspace. If your environment invites laziness, rearrange it so it supports your goals instead of sabotaging them. Removing distractions is not about restriction, it is about liberation. You are freeing your mind from unnecessary choices. You are freeing your attention from constant noise. You are freeing your energy to focus on what actually matters. When distractions are removed, consistency becomes 10 times easier. Not because you suddenly become powerful, but because you are no longer fighting against invisible forces pulling you backward. Every meaningful change in life requires space, mental space, emotional space, and physical space. If your mind is cluttered, your actions will be scattered. But when the clutter is cleared, your path becomes obvious. You begin to feel lighter. Tasks that once felt heavy suddenly feel manageable. You stop wasting energy on resisting temptation and start investing it into building your future. Removing distractions also reveals the truth about your discipline. When you eliminate the things that constantly break your focus, you discover that you were never lazy. You were simply surrounded by too many drains. Once those drains are closed, your natural ability to stay consistent begins to shine. So before you push yourself harder, before you force yourself to work longer, before you blame yourself for a lack of discipline, look around and ask, what is silently stealing my focus? What is pulling my mind away? What needs to be removed so my effort can finally work? Your success is not just built by what you add to your life. It is built by what you subtract. When you remove distractions from the route, you remove the biggest obstacles to your consistency. And once the obstacles are gone, your discipline flows naturally, your progress becomes steady, and your journey becomes smoother than ever before. When a goal is only logical, it rarely survives long. The mind understands it, but the heart does not feel it. And whatever the heart does not feel, the mind struggles to stay committed to. This is why so many people make plans, set resolutions, start routines, but within days or weeks, they fall back into old habits. It's not because the goal wasn't important. It's because the goal wasn't emotional. Human beings are driven far more by emotion than by information. You can know exactly what to do and still not do it. But when you attach deep meaning, personal connection, and heartfelt purpose to something, you stop treating it like a task. It becomes a part of who you want to be. Imagine two people waking up early. One does it because a book said, waking up early is productive. The other does it because they want to break a long cycle of failure in their family, or because they want more time to build a future they've dreamed of for years, or because they don't want to waste their potential anymore. Who do you think will stay consistent longer? Of course, the person with the emotional reason. Information motivates the mind, but emotion fuels the soul. When you attach emotions to your goals, you give your actions a heartbeat, a reason to fight, a reason to endure, a reason to continue even when you feel tired, demotivated, or discouraged. Without emotion, habits feel like chores. With emotion, habits feel like commitments, sacred, personal, meaningful. Think of how people protect those they love. No matter how tired, busy, or stressed they are, if someone they deeply care about needs help, they will show up. Why? Because the emotional bond is stronger than the excuses. Now imagine if you built that kind of emotional attachment to your own goals. Imagine caring about your future self so much that skipping your routines feels like letting someone important down. Imagine valuing your dreams so deeply that staying consistent becomes an act of love, not discipline. Emotion also increases resilience. Life is unpredictable. You will face setbacks, bad days, and distractions. If your goals are only logical, the smallest inconvenience will break your rhythm. But if your goals are connected to something emotional, your values, your loved ones, your identity, your pain, your dreams, you become unstoppable. You don't quit when you are tired, you rest and return. You don't give up when you fail, you adjust and continue. Emotion gives you the strength to rise again. Even your brain responds differently when a goal has emotional meaning. Neuroscience shows that emotionally charged experiences are stored more deeply and powerfully. When you link your goal to something that matters to you emotionally, a memory, a desire, a fear, or a promise, your brain builds stronger pathways for that habit. The habit doesn't feel forced anymore. It feels natural, connected, alive. The key is to ask yourself, why does this matter to me? What will happen if I achieve this? What will happen if I don't? Who will I become? How will my life change? What pain will I end? What joy will I create? The deeper the emotional connection, the stronger the consistency. For some people, the emotion comes from wanting to prove something to themselves. For others, it comes from a moment in their past that hurt them and pushed them toward growth. For some, it comes from wanting to give their family a better life. For others, it comes from a vision of who they want to be: calm, disciplined, successful, healthy, fulfilled. Find your emotional anchor. Find the feeling behind your goal. Don't just write what you want to achieve. Write why achieving it matters to your heart. Because when your heart is involved, your footsteps don't stop. When your emotions align with your actions, consistency becomes something you are drawn to rather than pushed into. Attach emotions to your goals, and you will discover a version of yourself that is far more powerful, committed, and unshakable than you ever imagined. One of the biggest traps people fall into is waiting for the perfect time, the perfect day, the perfect mood, the perfect energy, the perfect situation. They tell themselves, I'll start when things settle down, when I'm free, when I'm ready, when I have more time, when life becomes easier. But here's the truth. The perfect time is an illusion. It does not exist. And the more you wait for it, the further your goals drift away from you. Life is never going to stand still for your convenience. There will always be something, a problem, a distraction, a responsibility, a challenge, a reason to delay. If you base your progress on the condition that everything must fall into place first, you will spend your whole life waiting instead of living. Starting messy is better than not starting. Starting imperfect is better than planning endlessly. Starting with confusion, doubt, and fears is still better than waiting for confidence to magically appear. Confidence doesn't come before you begin. It comes because you begin. Think about every great achievement in your life. Did you ever start anything perfectly? Probably not. When you learned to ride a bicycle, you didn't wait for perfect balance. You found balance by wobbling. When you learned to speak, your words weren't perfect. You learned by trying, failing, trying again. When you took your first steps as a child, you didn't stand up flawlessly. You fell again and again until walking became natural. Why do we forget this truth when we grow older? Why do we suddenly expect our beginnings to be flawless? Because adulthood teaches us to fear imperfection, fear judgment, fear failure. But the reality is, errors, perfection kills progress. If you wait to feel fully ready, you'll never move. Success has always belonged to people who were willing to take the first step while they were still scared, still unprepared, still uncertain. The moment you begin, even in an imperfect state, you trigger momentum. And momentum is far more valuable than perfection. Momentum builds clarity. Once you start, you begin to understand what works and what doesn't. You learn faster than anyone who is still sitting on the sidelines, thinking about starting. You adjust, improve, adapt, and suddenly, what once felt unclear becomes simple. What felt overwhelming becomes manageable. What felt risky becomes normal. But none of this happens until you take the first step. The perfect time is not something you find. It is something you create by starting. And here's something deeper. Waiting for the perfect moment is often just fear in disguise. We tell ourselves we're planning, preparing, organizing, thinking, but behind those excuses, we're simply afraid to fail. The mind protects ego by delaying action. If I never try, I can never fail. But this comfort comes with a painful cost, the cost of unrealized potential. Every dream has an expiration date if you keep delaying. Every opportunity has a window. Every season of life passes. The longer you postpone, the harder the journey becomes. Not because the task becomes more difficult, but because your confidence shrinks. Starting today, even if imperfectly, sends a powerful message to your brain. If I am capable of taking action, even in uncertainty, that message becomes the foundation of discipline. That discipline shapes your consistency. That consistency builds your success. Don't wait until your life is organized. Don't wait until your emotions are perfect. Don't wait until your circumstances look ideal. Begin now, exactly as you are, with whatever you have, because those who begin imperfectly end up achieving more than those who wait perfectly. Start now, start messy, start scared, but start. Because that simple decision can change the entire direction of your life. Comparison is one of the most silent killers of consistency. It destroys motivation from within without making any noise. You start a goal with excitement, passion, and determination, but the moment you look around and see someone doing better, faster, smarter, stronger, you begin to question yourself. Suddenly your journey feels slow, your progress feels small, and your efforts feel meaningless. Not because they actually are, but because you are measuring them against someone else's timeline. Comparison is dangerous because it creates a false reality. You see someone's highlight reel and compare it to your behind the scenes struggles. You see the finished product of someone's years of dedication and compare it to your very first attempts. You see the success that took someone a decade to build and feel insecure because you haven't achieved it in a few months. This destroys the mind, weakens the heart, and kills consistency. The truth is, no two journeys are the same. No two people start from the same circumstances, with the same strengths, the same challenges, the same timing, the same support, or the same experiences. You are running a race that is completely yours, yet comparison makes you believe you are competing with the entire world. When you compare yourself to others, your mind loses focus. Instead of giving your full attention to your own progress, part of your energy becomes invested in observing others, judging yourself, doubting your pace, and feeling insignificant. This mental noise drains the motivation you need to keep moving. It makes you forget how far you've come because you're too busy staring at how far someone else has gone. And here's the most painful part. Comparison turns growth into suffering. A journey that could have been joyful, slow, beautiful, and deeply meaningful becomes a burden. Instead of appreciating your small wins, you dismiss them. Instead of noticing your improvement, you ignore it. Instead of celebrating your effort, you compare it. And slowly, your mind begins to whisper, maybe I'll never reach there. Maybe I'm too slow. Maybe I should stop. This is how people lose consistency. Not because they lack ability, but because they lose belief. You must understand something powerful. Your only real competition is the person you were yesterday. If you can become even 1% better today than you were the day before, you are winning. If you can take one small step forward, even after failing, you are winning. If you can show up one more time, even when you feel tired, you are winning. Progress is not determined by how fast you move. It is determined by how consistently you move. Look at nature. A bamboo plant spends years growing its roots underground before it ever breaks the surface. A sunflower takes time to turn toward the sun before it grows tall. The moon has phases, the tides rise and fall, the seasons change slowly, everything in nature grows at its own pace. Yet everything reaches its fullest potential exactly when it is meant to. You are no different. When you detach from comparison, you free yourself from pressure. You begin to appreciate the beauty of your own timing. You begin to notice your own growth. You begin to feel proud of steps that once felt too small. And these feelings create momentum. Momentum that leads to consistency. Consistency that leads to mastery. And mastery that leads to success. Protect your mind from comparison the same way you would protect a small flame from the wind. Your consistency is that flame. It grows brighter when you nurture it, but it weakens when you expose it to the wrong environment. Instead of saying, "Look how far they are," start saying, "Look how far I've come." Instead of asking, "Why am I not there yet?" start asking, "What can I do today to become better than yesterday?" Instead of thinking, "I am behind," start thinking, "I am becoming." Your journey is sacred. Your timing is unique. Your progress is real, even if it is slow. And once you stop comparing, you will finally have the mental space, emotional energy, and inner peace needed to stay consistent and reach your own extraordinary destination.